In the hospital, I'm certain that my marriage is ending as my wife has given birth, though official confirmation is forthcoming. The DNA test is being expedited due to special circumstances, but I doubt the results will alter anything. While I wait, my phone continues to buzz at a bar nearby. Calls from my wife, children, and relatives pile up, yet I remain unmoved. Despite their curiosity, I'm equally eager to learn the truth. The newborn is charming with golden curls like her mother. She weighed 7 pounds 12 ounces and was 19 inches long at birth, a healthy, full-term baby. However, my wife claims she was born prematurely by around 6 weeks. I may not be a doctor, but I'm no fool either. A prematurely born infant wouldn't exhibit such flawless development and complexion. My wife has been dishonest, and the truth is now painfully clear. My worst fear has manifested. The child she claims is mine is actually my deceased best friend's. As the waitress sets down my fifth shot of Jack Daniels, I realize I'll likely squander $150 on a bottle that typically costs $125, yet I don't mind. Plunging back into my lethargy, I can't help but reflect on the good old days with Gary. We were like an inseparable trio ever since our families settled on the same block, all within a span of 2 years around the age of 5. Gary and my family moved in during the summer, while Tracy's family joined us the following spring. Although Gary and I were already friends, Tracy fit seamlessly into our dynamic. Being quite the tomboy back then, she outpaced me in speed and strength, and we never played a sport or game without her involvement. Instead of playing with dolls like other girls, Tracy preferred kickball or stickball with us boys, demonstrating her prowess. As we entered our teenage years, things shifted slightly. Notably, Tracy underwent a physical transformation from a skinny blonde with long pigtails to a young woman with burgeoning curves, glossy hair, and a new figure. Both Gary and I observed these changes, but remained silent out of fear that mentioning it might provoke an angry reaction from Tracy. The following year, on some occasions, Gary was absent for various reasons, which I found acceptable. During those times, Tracy and I felt closer to each other, both physically and emotionally. On a hot summer Sunday afternoon, when Gary was out with his family, Tracy and I sat together on my porch swing. I don't remember what we discussed, but suddenly she leaned in and gave me my first kiss. Wow, I breathed, lost for words. Tracy blushed as our eyes met. I reached for her hand, and we stayed there, rocking gently. The following day, Gary reappeared, and if our previous kiss hadn't transpired, I wouldn't have thought it possible. Tracy acted as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. At one instance, I attempted to take her hand, but she coolly withdrew it. I was perplexed. As our school year's Christmas dance drew nearer, I decided it was appropriate to ask Tracy officially. One day, while we were walking back from school, I summoned the courage to query, Trace, if you aren't occupied next month, would you like to attend the Christmas dance with me? Tracy, who was positioned between Gary and myself, abruptly halted our progress. I observed Gary smirking as we came to a standstill. I'm already going with Gary, she informed me the day prior. Bobby seemed uncomfortable. Gary smiled, making me feel as though I had been struck in the stomach. I apologize, Bobby. You were too tardy, Gary joked. I felt self-conscious in two aspects. First, I was unaware that Gary harbored feelings for Tracy, and second, there exists an unwritten code among men. You shouldn't involve your friends in such matters, girl, not even during times of confusion. Hey, Gar, I didn't mean it that way when I asked. I didn't know, you said. I get it, Bobby, no bad blood, he replied cheerfully. The rest of the walk home made Tracy uncomfortable. She and Gary conversed while you stayed silent. No one else joined us at the dance, nor did I attend alone. That night, both my closest friends disappointed me. My father noticed my gloominess and asked about it. Girls, huh, he said, sitting down at my desk. Can't live with them. Can't kill them. Surprised by his words, I shook off my thoughts as he grinned at me. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate your sentiment, I responded. After the dance, Tracy and Gary became an official couple, staying together throughout high school. Eventually, I started dating other girls. The two friends parted ways when college began. I went to Michigan State, while Gary attended UCLA. However, during our first year there, I deliberately avoided Tracy out of consideration for her relationship with Gary. This puzzled Tracy, but I didn't want others to perceive me as intruding on their bond. One day, Tracy's mother, whom I considered a second mother, questioned if I was upset with her daughter. The Fords were like family to me, and I held them in high regard. She yearns for the old days, Bobby, Mrs. F. informed me. Those days can't be revisited, Mrs. F. We aren't children anymore, and if she isn't with me, Gary is the right man for her, I responded. Our dynamic remained unchanged during our sophomore year, but towards the end of our junior year, Tracy invited me to her sorority formal. This took me by surprise and made me wary. Tracy, aren't you still with Gary? I inquired, concerned about causing trouble. We broke up after summer, she replied. He decided to stay in California for law school and didn't want to hinder my progress. Law school? That came as a shock, I said. Initially hesitant, our first date led to a second, followed by an intimate encounter on the fourth. I observed she wasn't inexperienced, but neither was I, so I let it pass. We dated for 2 years before we wed, overcoming my apprehensions. Gary served as my best man at the wedding. It was strange having him, who had previously dated and been intimate with my spouse, as my main supporter during the ceremony. Following the wedding, Gary returned to California, and I didn't think much about him for more than 2 decades. Our daughter Kaylee arrived 2 years after our marriage, followed by our son Jeffrey 2 years later. We were informed that Gary would be visiting soon due to his parents still living nearby. Mrs. Prescott mentioned this to my mom, who suggested a gathering so Gary could see old friends and family before he said goodbye. He had cancer and wanted to spend time with his family while he was still strong enough. Despite being at the initial phase of his treatment, Gary appeared relatively healthy, although his profound sorrow was noticeable. He was a divorcee twice and childless. For hours, the trio Gary, Tracy, and I delved into discussions about life, focusing significantly on his impending journey. As the night drew to a close, Tracy suggested an idea that would eventually test our marital bond. What if we decide to assist you until hospice becomes necessary? Tracy proposed. Both Gary and I were taken aback by this unexpected suggestion from Tracy. We had never considered this option before, and initially I was unsure about its feasibility. After all, who else would be capable of doing this other than our longtime friend Bobby? Tracy reasoned. However, the doctors predict that I may have several months until hospice is required, Gary clarified. We can't simply abandon our responsibilities to care for you. We're already supporting 2 college students. My employer highly values family leave, Tracy asserted. Bobby can utilize his time off, and we can find a way to make it work. I responded, that would likely only provide us with a couple of months, dear. I noted, it's not sufficient. Tracy proposed, we could take turns extending the duration to 4 months. I can manage on my own for the rest of the time. The idea didn't sit well with me. Although I was aware that Gary is our longtime friend, it was Tracy who had just offered to be away from me and our home for several months to look after him. Since she expressed this in front of Gary, reneging would make me appear inconsiderate. Even so, Tracy, that's a significant commitment, I started, but she stopped me with a stern gaze. It was clear then. That's what we're going to do, she decided firmly. I held my tongue and remained quiet. That night, as soon as I returned home, I couldn't contain my agitation. What's the issue, Tracy? You're just planning on abandoning me for months to take care of an old flame, she retorted. You're being so self-centered. Did our past sleep together cause this situation? That night, I slept in Jeffy's former bedroom. It took us 3 days to come to terms with aiding Gary, essentially fulfilling Tracy's plans. He was appreciative, expressing thanks numerous times to both me and Tracy. After the initial month, I found myself plagued by guilt over my initial response. Juggling work, home responsibilities, and helping Tracy care for Gary, who had his ups and downs, left me drained. By the second month, I began sensing a rift between me and Tracy. Assuming she was equally exhausted with her work for Gary, at times more than I thought was warranted, I chose not to dwell on it too much. However, I couldn't ignore the subtle interactions between Tracy and Gary, which seemed like their own private code. The situation deteriorated further in the subsequent months. At certain instances, I felt as though I was encroaching upon their private moments. Additionally, I observed that Tracy appeared somewhat detached during our intimate experiences. After a week's separation, I yearned to rekindle our connection, but she seemed indifferent. I attributed it to fatigue, both mental and physical. After 4 months, I had exhausted all my days off, and despite Gary's deteriorating health, I recognized he still had some time left. Tracy would have to manage everything on her own, and I had to accept being solitary for a month or longer. When I ran out of vacation days, our daughter Kaylee intervened to assist, which I found admirable given Gary was her godfather. She spent 2 weeks at different instances helping her mother. About a month later, Gary needed hospice care, and within another month, he passed away. I returned to California for his funeral. Tracy grieved deeply, much like Gary's parents. They couldn't express enough gratitude for our assistance, but I deflected most of the praise towards my spouse. Upon Tracy's return home, she initially appeared distant towards me, which I attributed to her mourning. However, unexpectedly, our dynamics shifted, and for the next 3 weeks, we were intimate daily. It felt like we were young once more. A month later, Tracy astounded me by appearing with a positive pregnancy test from the bathroom. I should have been taken aback by her nonchalance, but I was too bewildered by the news itself. Tracy and I were both 45. Our children were 22 and 20, and wait, wasn't she on birth control? I apologize, baby, but I forgot my pills when we went to California, and once I stopped taking them, I never resumed upon our return. And you know we're against termination. We can handle this together, just as before. I found myself agreeing with her, despite my disbelief. Indeed, I was going to be a father again. For nearly a week, an uncontainable smile adorned my face, and with Tracy experiencing heightened sexual desire, we shared intimacy every night, at times even twice. It was almost overpowering, yet delightful. When my daughter arrived for a long weekend, she and Tracy went shopping for baby and maternity items. They brought back several bags filled with merchandise after emptying our old baby equipment. The girls prepared a quick meal, and we all laughed as Tracy compared the purchases from today to those from a couple of decades ago. She felt slightly uncomfortable in some of the maternity clothes since they appeared more appropriate for women 2 decades younger. Well, Mom, it's not your fault if you're a MILF and someone took it too seriously, Kaylee teased. As I pondered on Kaylee's remark, I observed Tracy giving her a disapproving look. The realization hit me that Kaylee used someone instead of dad. It wasn't casual, it gave me an uneasy feeling. It reminded me of the discomfort I felt during my visit to California while helping Gary. I kept quiet but stayed vigilant throughout the weekend. I overheard a few indirect remarks, making me ponder if Kaylee was directing them at me or my wife. I attempted to subtly inquire about Kaylee's feelings when she might be alone with Tracy, asking her thoughts on becoming a big sister again. She seemed to ponder before replying, then laughed nervously and coughed. I think it's neat that Mom is still attractive and you're like the man, she said, looking uncomfortable and quickly exiting the room. I took a few more cigarettes from the pack I had been carrying. Tracy was growing larger, and I admired her beauty more each week. Despite persisting discomfort, I remained perplexed about the source of my unease, or perhaps avoided contemplating it. A few months afterward, while at work, an unexpected call arrived from Tracy. Having recently returned to work for merely 3 months, she'd taken time off. "Hey, Dad," she coquettishly said over the phone, surprising me as I thought Tracy was barely 7 or 7.5 months pregnant, her voice sounding unusually provocative. Uncertain of her intentions, I asked, "What about the hospital, sweetheart? Anything wrong?" I felt more than a tinge of concern. "Indeed, darling," she purred. "My water broke, and I'd rather not walk to the hospital." In a moment of shock, all I could mutter was, "Oh no." I swiftly informed my boss, grabbed my keys, and hurried out to my vehicle. Though my workplace was 15 minutes away, that day I managed the drive in just 12 minutes. I found it odd that Tracy appeared so tranquil given she was 6 to 6.5 months pregnant, a time that usually brings anxiety. Premature births are harmful for the baby's health. When I returned home, an unexpected calmness enveloped Tracy, while I felt more anxious than ever before with our previous 2 kids. 10 hours later, I became a father again to another seemingly flawless daughter, or so it seemed. The thought of her condition made me feel queasy, and then some upon the nurse's return with the baby to clean her up. She tried to hand the baby over to me, but my reflex was to retreat, surprising the nurse. "This baby was full term, correct, doctor?" I whispered hesitantly. He glanced at me and then Tracy, who was being attended by another nurse. They exchanged a look, and I noticed Tracy subtly shake her head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Marsley, but I can't disclose information about the baby's health with you." "You're not on the privacy list," he explained, quoting HIPAA regulations. I'm ashamed of what followed, but I couldn't regain composure. I shouted, "Forget HIPAA," shocking both him and the nurses in the delivery room. "If that child is mine, I deserve to know about its health. If it isn't, then you should be aware. You can't legally add my name on the birth certificate without my permission, and trust me, you don't have it." The room fell quiet as I stormed out, discarding my delivery room clothing behind me. Upon leaving the hospital, I saw both sets of our parents in the room. I lingered at the bar, consuming shots 6 and 7 and eating a burger. Everyone who mattered to me had called, except for the doctor with the DNA results. I assumed Tracy didn't want to prolong things, as it appeared quite evident by then. Blast, it seems 7 shots of Jack Daniels amidst a mountain of stress are more important than discovering my wife had another man's child, as I slept soundly that night. My voicemail and inbox were overflowing. Anticipating everything would proceed fine once I left, we were scheduled to bring Tracy and the baby home today. I took a brief shower before returning to the hospital, feeling like I was being battered both inside and out. Upon arriving at her room, Tracy was nursing the baby. She unhooked the baby when I entered and placed it in the bassinet next to her bed. "I don't know where to begin, Bobby," Tracy whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "It wasn't premeditated. I went there to offer support, to be a friend, truthfully. But he had some challenging days, and once, he was crying, and things escalated. We ended up in bed together, like old times. When it began, it was difficult to stop, particularly when you visited. We resumed our relationship, which felt strange and wrong, yet I was uncertain about ending it, perhaps because I didn't want to. For 4 months we had been inseparable, the last 2 continuously due to your absence. However, it transpired that we were sexually active even when I wasn't on birth control, implying the possibility of your paternity. But it turned out not to be the case. As she looked at the baby, she confessed. I listened intently until I inquired, "Hold on, you were with Gary while Kaylee was here?" My voice trembled with disbelief. Tracy's cheeks reddened, and I fought to conceal my rage. She knew but chose not to inform me. "Me?" I exclaimed, my frustration mounting. "Did you at least communicate with her or make a commitment? This can't be true. Was Jeffrey aware? Or our parents? Did everyone know about my betrayal?" I ranted, my voice hoarse. Tracy's eyes filled with tears as she replied, "Yes, she had agreed to keep it secret from me." "I'm responsible for that," Tracy admitted. "Jeffrey is unaware, and it should remain that way for the sake of Bobby Geraldine. Only you, me, and Kaylee know about this. We need to be there for her because she belongs to us now, much like Kaylee and Jeffrey. She might not be biologically yours, but we are her parents in every sense. This is for her benefit and our friends. He wasn't your friend if he slept with you, especially while you were married. He was terminally ill, Bobby. We had been intimate before, but never during the time of my marriage to you," Tracy clarified. "Is there more you're holding back?" I asked. Her eyes displayed rage. "No, definitively not. Bobby Geraldine Martin is her full name," she added. "You should recall that shared last name as well. Yet, Gary is named as her father on the birth certificate. She made it clear that only we need to be aware of this if you still wish to remain unlisted. "Ah, right," was my response. "Why, Bobby, he was our friend. He's deceased now. I offered him comfort and affection during his final days. What's the issue with that? You portray it as a noble act, but you overstepped boundaries. You disregarded our marriage vows, our commitment, and the impact on me," I argued. "Yes, it's your body, and I can't dictate your actions. But we pledged fidelity before our families and God." I suggested that we should have discussed this matter first. Our vows were significant. They weren't empty words. "I will not raise a child fathered by another man with an unfaithful spouse," I said. "But she is Gary's child," Tracy objected. "Would you raise her if Gary had passed and she was left alone?" "Perhaps, but I never agreed to raise his child with you," I responded sorrowfully. "I value our relationship, Bobby. I do. I'm concerned about potentially losing what we have due to this situation," I interjected. "However, that wasn't my intended meaning," she countered. "Perhaps it was not a wise decision, but I wouldn't label it as a mistake. The error was in failing to discuss the matter first, and I acknowledge responsibility for that. We didn't speak about it because you knew I wouldn't approve of your relationship with Gary, let alone his child," I stated grudgingly. "Had you not become pregnant, you might never have told me about the affair. Regardless of how it began, you continued it, even in our daughter's presence. That spelled out humiliation clearly." Kaylee and Jeffrey returned from college the following weekend to meet their new sibling. I maintained a distance with my daughter upon her arrival, and she seemed remorseful. We cooked dinner together that night while they doted on the baby for an hour. In the kitchen, she steered clear of eye contact while we worked in silence. Following dinner, Jeffrey cleared the table, and I took Kaylee aside for a private chat on the back patio. I accused her, "You were aware that Mom was unfaithful and didn't say anything?" On hearing my outburst, Kaylee's eyes brimmed with tears. She hesitated before looking directly into my pained gaze. "I admired what you and Mom did for Uncle Gary. When Mom acted as she did, I was initially taken aback, but then I saw it as brave, sad, empathetic, and loving, almost like a Shakespearean tragedy. I never expected her to get pregnant. I thought he was too ill for that, and assumed she was on birth control, a compassionate friend or a deceitful woman. So, those seem to be my choices," I responded angrily as she wept. "And what about the state of my marriage? Did you consider your father?" "Apparently not. The children left for college on Sunday afternoon." Following this, it was just the three of us, and the house seemed unsettlingly silent. Over the ensuing days, Tracy attempted several times to engage me with the baby, regardless of the brief duration. Each time, I refused, which upset her greatly. One time, she exclaimed at me, "You're acting like a child," when asking me to hold the baby for a moment. "Grow up and assume responsibility." Tracy seldom spoke harshly to me throughout our entire relationship. Her anger was palpable, but I remained unperturbed. Without uttering a word, I simply looked at her and left the room. Work became my sanctuary, allowing me to be absent for 40 hours each week. When I was home, I often found myself alone. There were many matters to address. I knew it wasn't fair to blame the baby, as she wasn't at fault. However, she wasn't mine to care for. She belonged to Tracy. Eventually, I decided that divorce was my sole option. I couldn't endure Tracy's deception and disregard. Each time I gazed at the infant, all that came to mind was Tracy and Gary as a pair. Upon arriving home, I found Tracy weeping at the kitchen table, coffee cup in hand, an open envelope before her. "Let's get pizza tonight, pepperoni and breadsticks sound good," I murmured, entering the room. "Is that all you concern yourself with? Dinner?" she retorted sharply, her voice laced with resentment. "Or do you not love me anymore?" I sighed, poured myself some coffee, and sat down. "I don't love you as much as I did a few weeks back," was my response. "It seems you failed to grasp that your actions with our best friend have ruined everything. If I were you, I'd find a lawyer and inform Gary's parents about their granddaughter. I'm certain they'll be thrilled." I was going to say, she began. "I don't want a divorce. I still love you. Just take a moment to consider your actions. Will you truly be better off alone?" "I highly doubt it." "Ponder it over, dear. That's all I've been doing. This isn't just about me. It's about you breaching our promises and shattering mine, as I conveyed. Yet, if you have love for me, could you not extend forgiveness? We can overcome this. We are meant to be together, Bobby. You realize this, don't you?" I believed I did, but this isn't something that can be resolved with a casual apology, he retorted. 24 years wasted. My initial call was to my son. I informed him about Tracy's actions and the baby being Gary's. He listened silently, then uttered a curse. I told him I had filed for divorce. "I hope so, Dad." "That's terrible. What was Mom thinking?" He attempted to console me. I could tell he was very upset with his mother. I reassured him that, despite what Tracy did to me, she still loved him just as much. He asked about the baby. My response: "I intend to do nothing about it. She is not my responsibility, neither financially nor emotionally." "I suppose things will be fine financially," I responded. "Assist in looking after your half-sister." The day following Tracy's service is when I first spoke to my parents. My father was enraged, both at Tracy for deceiving me and at me for allowing Tracy time with Gary. "You were aware of their past feelings. It's unbelievable that you didn't see it. Even if you completely trusted her, you can't trust any man with your woman." I had to concur with him. I should have been more determined to keep Tracy away from Gary. That part, at least, was my fault. My mother saw the situation differently than my father. She believed I was wrong for abandoning Tracy and not attempting reconciliation. "People make mistakes," she said softly, while my father sat fuming. "Mother, a mistake would have been if she had slept with him once. Spending 4 months together without protection was a conscious decision, hardly a mistake." I argued. "Deep within, Robert, you acknowledge your ongoing affection for her. She will require aid in raising the infant, a task that falls on you, Robert. By the way, you should note that baby is considered your third grandchild by Mom." This was Mom's subtle hint that she supports Tracy's standpoint. Dad looked up at the ceiling and then back at you, aware he would face her wrath later. I didn't reach out to Kaylee. I presumed she was likely Tracy's first contact after being served. As my assumption proved correct with Kaylee's angry call later that day, she urged, "Uncle Gary is deceased, Dad. Forget the affair. It can't be altered now. Progress forward. You and Mom still share a love, and there's a baby now involved. Stand by Mom and Bobby G, wise beyond her years." Sage offered guidance from a position that didn't require her to inform her own father of her mother's infidelity. "I find myself no longer interested in hearing your viewpoint," I responded. Later, it was revealed that Gary's parents were both startled and delighted upon discovering they now had a granddaughter. They were dismayed that Tracy intended to keep this fact hidden, but they empathized with her motivations. The next day, they reached out to me, insisting I should remain with Tracy to raise Gary's child. They felt my long-standing relationship with her made me the most suitable for the task. "I value your faith, yet I am not that person," I admitted, expressing my anger towards Gary and Tracy. Their voices seemed to falter on the phone, but I couldn't muster much guilt. I was merely being truthful. Subsequently, I received appeals from my in-laws, urging me to stay with Tracy. They acknowledged her actions were wrong and unwise, but they believed she still loved me and wanted to raise her child with me. I acknowledged their care, but I doubted I could overlook the past events. Tracy contested the divorce, and her attorney scheduled 12 joint counseling sessions for us. Upon entering Dr. Jocelyn McAdams' office, she appeared formal and businesslike, older than Tracy and myself. Dressed in a gray blazer and professional skirt, Tracy was already seated to my right. Dr. McAdam asked Tracy to speak first, and while she did, I found myself lost in thought. Assuming I would be given the chance to speak next, I was mistaken. "Mr. Martin," Dr. McAdam stated, "it seems you possess the power to determine your marriage's future. By relinquishing your ego and resolving issues with Tracy, you can preserve your family. This unexpected advice from a professional felt like everyone urging me to endure and move forward. Did I step into an alternate reality? "Hold on, Doc," I started, but she interrupted. "Dr. McAdam, please maintain a professional demeanor. I don't wish either of you to view me as a personal confidant or accomplice." "Is that your position, Dr. McAdam?" I inquired. "Is that what holds the greatest importance for you? It appears as though you have chosen a position without hearing my perspective first." I rose, turned, and departed. On my journey home, I contacted my attorney, demanding a neutral mediator for future discussions. The subsequent mediator at least listened to me following Tracy's account, but I still felt like I was waging a losing battle. "You continue to harbor feelings for your wife, Mr. Martin?" Dr. Lauren Avent inquired. "First and foremost, we were never truly a family." "That's not my child," I retorted. "I won't be raising another person's baby," I added. "It seems this is about your self-respect then," Dr. Avent remarked with a smug expression. "It appears that I cannot prevail in your presence," I said, frustration ringing in my voice. "Why must everything revolve around me? Allow me to paint a picture for you in words. You aren't the one who deceived my spouse or fathered another man's child," I stated. Instead, I directed my words towards Tracy, saying pointedly what she should answer for her decisions and future actions. A frown crossed Tracy's face, but I noticed it. The counselor attempted to maintain a neutral demeanor, but the question caught me off guard, much like the old Monty Python joke about the sudden Spanish Inquisition. "Mr. Martin," Dr. Avent asked, "if you were to divorce your wife and later marry a woman with children, wouldn't you essentially be raising another man's child?" The doctor had a point, I admitted, but in Tracy's case, the conception happened during our marriage isn't that significant. She subtly nodded, but she wasn't finished. "Given that the father of the child has already passed away before birth," Dr. Avent questioned, "aren't we just being pedantic about it now? Aren't you holding a grudge?" The doctor suggested I was being petty, to which I responded, "Petty is when you know you've made a mistake but decide to conceal it." She didn't reveal the truth until I challenged her, I defended. I was about to carry on, but I'd had enough. "You can't flip off love, and yes, I still have feelings for her, but how can she claim love when she cheated, got pregnant, and lied about the baby being mine? If she truly loved me, she wouldn't have done that. It wasn't a one-off incident. They had several encounters. Now she says it was out of compassion. He was her friend who was dying. If her actions were genuinely compassionate, why didn't she discuss it with me? Because she knew I would object, and she knew I would. I get that it's her body, but after taking vows, she forfeited the right to give her body to another man without consulting me. The same applies if I wanted to be with another woman. Once we made our commitment, we weren't living in isolation. That's all, Doc," I summarized. The counselor seemed unresponsive, with eyes open and a pen tapping on the pad like a comatose patient. "Is there sufficient affection remaining for you to take on the roles of husband and father?" This is what Dr. Avent inquired. "You continue to love your wife, as her child's biological father is absent. Let us not place her in a disadvantaged position. Take responsibility instead." "Indeed, that's insightful, Doctor, criticizing my masculinity. My wife and her closest companion have left me devastated. If he were alive, I would retaliate against him physically. The love I hold for her is rapidly diminishing. Concerning the child, it's unfortunate, but it's not my burden to bear." Translation: This marriage seems irreparable. During our subsequent counseling session, I remained quiet except for pleasantries. Tracy pleaded and wept. "It appears you have made your decision, Mr. Martin. I will inform the judge," Dr. Avent concluded. "Thank you, doctor." 6 months later, during the holiday season, our divorce was finalized. In our mutual consent divorce settlement, we divided all assets equally. Tracy compensated me for my share of the house, a fair arrangement considering she had a child to care for. Gary's inheritance assisted with the home purchase, and I provided alimony as I earned more. Despite my son backing me, I knew he desired to spend Christmas with his family mother, sister, and half-sister. I consented, arranging to celebrate New Year together later. 2 days prior to Christmas, I stopped by my former residence to deliver gifts for everyone, including my ex-wife and her baby. Though the gifts were minimal, I didn't want to appear petty in front of my children. Tracy showed surprise upon seeing me carrying Bobby Geraldine when she opened the door. She hesitated before allowing me inside, touched by the presents. As I walked into the living room, I observed familiar Christmas decorations that I hadn't set up this time. Tracy noticed the emotion on my face as I looked around and struggled to hold back tears. "Fancy some eggnog, Bobby? Then I'll put the gifts under the tree. Could you mind the baby for a while?" I hesitated to accept, but couldn't deny her request. Reluctantly, I took the baby, leaving Tracy with Gary. I fought off the rising feeling in my stomach as she went to get the eggnog. For roughly 30 seconds, I kept the child at a distance before gently holding her against me, reminiscent of how I once carried my own children. I then seated myself, and Tracy entered with 2 glasses of eggnog, beaming upon seeing the baby. "You've always been good with kids, Bobby," she murmured. "Not every man shares your knack for babies." I returned an uneasy smile. Despite the beauty of the child, who resembled her mother, the situation made me uncomfortable. "Is forgiveness possible without forgetting?" I questioned, harboring doubts, though my family held opposing views. Following some casual conversation, Tracy collected the gifts and arranged them beneath the tree. She hesitated at the first gift bearing Bobby Geraldine's name. "There was no need to include her in this, Bobby," Tracy said, a tear trickling down her face. "Christmas is for all, dear. I couldn't leave her out." My gaze shifted to the child in my arms. In other circumstances, she could have been mine. A lump formed in my throat. The child wasn't to be blamed despite her mother's actions that I abhor. It was no coincidence that Tracy handed me the infant for me to hold. Tracy became emotional upon seeing the first gift bearing her name. "Bobby, truly, you didn't have to. I wasn't anticipating anything. I didn't get you anything either. I apologize. Don't worry about it, Tracy. All I want is for you to have a fantastic Christmas. You could visit in person. You would be more than welcome. We'd have an abundance of food. I'm aware the kids would enjoy it as well," she said. "Not this year, Tracy. Perhaps next time. It's too soon, too raw for me." Tracy lowered her gaze. "I wasn't being malicious. I was being truthful. My wounds were still unhealed. On Christmas Eve, I found myself at Barnes and Noble in the late afternoon. I was engrossed in a new Clive Cussler book I had bought for myself, sipping on a peppermint mocha latte from Starbucks inside. There were a couple of other individuals reading in Starbucks as well. Similar to me, we were both forced to leave when they shut down. Upon returning home to a tranquil abode, I had prepared by acquiring chicken salad, making toast, and setting up Ruffles chips and Don Julio tequila for my meal. Clearly, I know how to indulge myself. A hangover on Christmas morning ensued after the ordeal, but with 4 aspirin, a couple of Pop-Tarts, and 3 cups of coffee, I regained strength. The issue: no grand plans were in sight. Instead, I found myself at my parents', sharing in Mom's baked ham dinner and exchanging gifts. My children had left presents for me, knowing I would be there for the holiday. Post-dinner, we savored hot chocolate laced with peppermint schnapps. Reminiscences of past Christmases washed over me. I confessed to myself that lingering feelings for Tracy remained, and I questioned whether I had made the right choice. It appeared as though everyone was contemplating their past, including myself. Mom spoke up. "Bobby, it seems we view Geraldine as our grandchild, which is why we bought her Christmas gifts." After a long pause, she added, "Gary isn't around anymore, and the baby won't know him. She might accept any decent man as her father." Mom continued, "We don't approve of Tracy's actions, but we understand them to some extent, and our feelings for her remain unchanged." In conclusion, she suggested, "You have a chance, Bobby, to step up. You should consider it. Many desire that role, and I believe you do as well. You just haven't found the courage to acknowledge it." Mom's voice trembled as she concluded, leaving Dad to glare at me. I couldn't help but wonder if I was the only one missing something. Perhaps, but I knew I couldn't bring myself to accept her after months of infidelity, deception, and having another man's child. Her explanation about Gary being compassionate seemed unconvincing to me. A year later, my life remained much the same. Work, solitude at home, limited dating, and fewer friends. I never had many friends anyway, but Tracy did, as well as us as a couple. Mostly disappeared following the divorce. I wasn't taken aback by her friends leaving, but I was taken aback when our mutual ones did too, until one former friend revealed the reason. Tracy had told everyone that I abandoned her after the baby, neglecting to mention it wasn't mine. While at a local bar alone, Carl and Susie Dimmick entered and took their seats. They were part of our circle of friends, but their reaction when I greeted them was chilly. Susie scowled, and Carl barely managed politeness. I hadn't done anything to annoy them, so I was infuriated by the frosty greeting and didn't intend to let it pass. "What in the world did I do to you too?" I demanded. "Not to us, but to Tracy," Susie retorted. "How could you leave behind the sweetest woman alive just because she had a baby later in life? You're despicable, you know." "Is this the reason?" I queried, astonished. "Listen before you judge." They motioned for me to sit, but I was too agitated, so I stood before their table. I moved closer to speak softly to prevent shouting. "I assume you didn't inform me that the child in question isn't mine. Her pregnancy was from her former spouse who died of cancer soon after. She attempted to deceive me into believing it was my child. With a marriage spanning 24 years, I had not expected this betrayal. No, she wasn't the one who left. I was the one who got left. Both of them can go to hell, along with their beliefs." Leaving behind my ex-friends at the table, I embarked on my second Christmas as a divorced man, mirroring last year's experience. This Christmas Eve, my gathering at Barnes and Noble was made up of only 4 individuals, myself and 3 others. I noticed one had curly red hair, freckles, and an amiable expression, while the other was beautiful, Asian with long black hair, hinting at her curves beneath her sweatshirt and jeans. Her skin was impeccable, and I estimated her age to be around 50. After observing her for a brief moment, I thought, why not? She could only decline. I picked up my book and latte before heading towards her. As I drew nearer, she glanced up. "I didn't notice you here on Christmas Eve last year. You seem like a new member of our Christmas Eve social club. I am Bobby, the president. Why are you here on this special day, such a beautiful woman?" She chuckled at my unoriginal joke, which had been a while since hearing something that delightful. "Motivated," I said next. "I know it's a long shot, but I happen to have another ready-made dinner for 2 in my freezer that I could heat up tonight if you don't already have plans." Given our brief acquaintance, I attempted to maintain an innocent expression, hoping the skill hadn't faded with time. "Well, I rarely do such spontaneous things, but considering your status as club president and mentioning hungry man dinner, yes, I accept. By the way, my name is Angel Wong." "Bobby Martin, your humble servant and club president," was my response. I shared my address with her, suggesting she come over at 6 before hurrying home to prepare the meal. At precisely 6 o'clock, she joined us for dinner, finding both meals simmering. I found myself contemplating our peculiarity. We took our seats at the kitchen table to partake in our suppers and a bottle of Burgundy. In the course of conversation, I disclosed my presence at Barnes and Noble on Christmas Eve, which she reciprocated with her own narrative. Angel, 5 years senior at 52, had been divorced for a decade following a separation from an abusive spouse. Their marriage spanned 16 years, but the abuse didn't surface until after a decade and intensified to the point that he hospitalized her with a fractured jaw. Petite in stature, Angel stood at just 5 feet 1 inch and weighed around 100 pounds, while her ex was slightly taller and heavier at 5 feet 2 inches and 120 pounds. It proved challenging for Angel to leave him, as she bore the burden of guilt. However, it wasn't until a counselor convinced her that she was blameless that she decided to sever ties with him after another beating in the hospital awakened her. Her spouse was incarcerated for battery and served 2 years before vanishing completely from her existence. Thankfully, they didn't share any children. Angel admitted to seldom dating since her divorce and having no relatives nearby. Christmas was always a challenging period for her, she confessed, on the verge of tears. It might have been somewhat impulsive for me to accept your invitation tonight, but I simply didn't want to be alone. And who could refuse dinner to a hungry man, she admitted. I found myself immersed in self-pity at Barnes and Noble, but speaking with Angel made me understand my situation was better than many. We decided to relax on my couch, sipping wine and watching some Christmas films. We began with the Mr. Magoo adaptation of A Christmas Carol. I knew Angel was unique when she wholeheartedly concurred with my perspective that Mr. Magoo embodied the quintessential Scrooge. Afterwards, we watched The Grinch, and by halfway through It's a Wonderful Life, I noticed Angel had dozed off. In a tranquil state, I fetched a large blanket, shielding her with one part and nestling beneath the other. Eventually, it seemed I dozed off as well. Upon awakening, our initial side-by-side positions had altered. Angel's head rested on my chest, while half of her body lay over mine. One arm encircled her tightly, while my other hand nestled in a pocket at the back. The television played softly in the background. Despite its peculiarity, it felt perfectly natural to cradle Angel as she slept for another 20 minutes. Upon her waking and opening her eyes, perplexity flickered across her face. I lifted my head as much as possible and tenderly kissed her nose. She adorably wrinkled her nose in response, followed by the brightest smile I'd witnessed in years. "Morning?" she asked tentatively. "Merry Christmas," I responded, hugging her closer. We remained there smiling for another 5 minutes before she spoke again. "I've never done anything like this before, I swear," she insisted. Her cheeks flushed. "Isn't it only me who senses this?" I grinned broadly. "Absolutely, I can feel it too." She moved nearer until our lips locked in a fervent kiss. It didn't take long before we began to undress each other. She was more captivating than I had envisioned. In my mind, the situation felt incredibly wild. Despite only knowing her briefly, everything felt completely right. When I looked at her, she appeared to be thinking the same thing. "You may find this strange," I started, "but do you happen to have any plans for today? I've got all the essentials for a fantastic Christmas dinner, and if I'm going to put in all this effort, it wouldn't hurt to have a stunning woman seated on the other side of the table." Her smile grew brighter, melting my heart. "I need a shower, and I didn't bring any extra clothes," she responded. I returned her smile. "The shower is spacious enough for 2 people, and I think there's a garment that would fit you. If you're comfortable with the sight of me without makeup, I'm on board." We proceeded to the kitchen, where I served us each a glass of Riesling while preparing dinner. "Do you have anything planned today?" "No. Any family events or gatherings?" she inquired. I had been invited to a large family Christmas celebration this year, but opted for different arrangements. My former partner is hosting everyone at our old residence. The children, parents, her parents, Gary's parents, the whole lot. It's quite the gathering. She will undoubtedly pass my cute child to me. All parents will remind me of the need for my involvement, and she will be there, expressing love and suggesting we can revive our relationship. I informed them of other plans, but they are unaware of the situation. I mentioned that I would try to drop by briefly if possible. They don't comprehend my perspective. I didn't cheat, I simply declined their invitation. I needn't apologize since Tracy acted dishonestly and made mistakes. We had a unique connection until we didn't. However, let's discuss our special relationship instead. We both smiled as I approached Angel for a deep kiss. At that moment, the door key turned, and it opened to reveal my son entering. Angel and I were in the midst of our kiss when this happened. "Dad," he called out before noticing us. Oh, wow." He seemed to notice us kissing, then shifted his attention towards Angel's exposed legs. It was safe to assume all 3 of us blushed. Angel hastily lowered her legs and stood behind me, attempting to maintain a sense of modesty in her sweater. Jeffrey immediately turned away, presumably to show respect for Angel's modesty, although I suspect he felt just as embarrassed as she did. "Mom knows I have a key to your place," he said, "and asked me to come here and bring you back home for Christmas dinner because she thought you were sitting alone, feeling pitiful. It appears you weren't deceiving about your prior relationship, and she is. That's hardly shameful. I apologize if I disrupted something. You're not disturbing anything other than my Christmas meal preparation, I said a bit hastily as Angel and I exchanged awkward glances. May I present Jeffrey to you? My angel, Jeffrey responded, hesitantly turning around in the kitchen. It was evident that Angel wore nothing beneath her sweater, but at least she was covered. She looked at me, shrugged, and then accepted the situation. Jeffrey, being a typical man, couldn't resist. He stole another look at Angel before nodding approvingly at me. Nice to meet you, Angel, and thank you for being here for my father, Jeffrey said. It's my pleasure, Jeffrey. Your father seems wonderful, Angel replied. Yes, it seems some family members forgot that for a moment, he remarked. Did everyone like the gifts I brought? I asked, changing the subject. About Bobby G, did she appreciate her gifts? You're still great at picking presents, Dad. Everyone seemed thrilled with their gifts. The baby was especially fond of hers. Jeffrey commented on how much she had received under the tree, with all the grandparents helping out. Good, good, I responded, nodding in approval. Later, Jeffrey mentioned he needed to leave. After nodding at Angel, he gave me a big hug. I suggested New Year's Eve. I assure you Angel will be more dressed, he replied, blushing. Once Jeffrey left, Angel looked at me. That wasn't too awkward, was it? She asked. And what's this about New Year's? Don't I get a say? I joked. Not this time, I teased. But where else would my future wife be on New Year's Eve? You seem quite certain, she retorted. I'll be even more certain when you pick out your ring tomorrow morning at Syro. Can I at least go home first and change clothes? I allowed, pretending to be disappointed. The next day, Angel picked a Marquise cut diamond engagement ring of 1 carat. Later, we had lunch, and I announced our engagement to my son, followed by my parents. My son was genuinely pleased for me, but my parents seemed less enthusiastic. They might still harbor the hope that I would reconcile with Tracy and raise her child together. Isn't this happening rather quickly, dear? My mom asked. Are you absolutely certain you aren't doing this to retaliate against Tracy? Aren't you aware she still cares for you? Mom, I'm not seeking revenge, and regarding Tracy's feelings, don't they say actions speak louder than words? Tracy prioritizes herself. I chose not to inform my daughter about it. Despite some mending of our relationship, she continued to view Tracy's actions as brave and motivated by love. I presumed she would eventually learn about Angel and try to persuade me to return to Tracy. After over 2 decades with Tracy, the emerging relationship with Angel left me perplexed. I struggled to comprehend our mutual draw or how flawlessly she meshed into my life. Our dialogues were smooth, and it seemed as if we'd known each other forever. Although I wasn't a believer in love at first sight, everything about us felt compatible. Angel wasn't young, and she was just as bewildered by our swift and deep connection as I was. Initially, we scrutinized things thoroughly, but then we recognized that we were overanalyzing it and chose to let things develop organically. And organic felt right. Within a month, she moved in with me, and for the subsequent 6 months, we spent little time apart. Despite Angel not being Tracy, my parents seemed to appreciate her. However, my daughter Kaylee made her dislike towards Angel clear, likely because she still harbored hopes of my reconciliation with her mother. We held a small wedding for ourselves 6 months later. I extended invitations to both my children and parents, while Angel invited a cousin, a friend, their families. We reserved a private room at one of my preferred restaurants for an intimate celebration. The day turned out great, except for when Kaylee challenged me about the absence of Tracy, Bobby G, and my ex-in-laws in the guest list. I didn't invite your mother because she's my former spouse, and it wouldn't have been fair to Angel under the circumstances. We haven't maintained friendly relations either. Normally, former in-laws are not recipients of wedding invitations. 2 years later, Angel and Tracy met at Kaylee's wedding. The event was flawlessly organized by Tracy, and I willingly covered the costs. In a diplomatic manner, Angel managed to avoid interfering with the bride's mother during the planning process. On that occasion, besides financing it, I escorted Kaylee gracefully down the aisle. The sight reminded me of shared memories between Tracy and Kaylee, such as coloring and baking cookies together. It served as a reminder that the 24 years we spent together weren't entirely negative. Angel perceived my feelings and consoled me during the church service, offering comfort. Her soft kiss conveyed confidence that I could manage the day. During the rehearsal dinner and wedding, Angel interacted with Tracy only when required, not out of apprehension, but out of reverence. Meanwhile, Tracy appeared irritated every time she spotted Angel. Later, I discovered that she and the grandparents thought Angel was replacing Tracy and our marriage wouldn't endure. However, our anticipated brief union has now reached 25 years. Angel and I commemorated with a delightful dinner and a tranquil night together. The evening wasn't as exhilarating as it could have been in the past, but we cherished cuddling afterward, drifting off to sleep in each other's arms. In retrospect, I can't fault my life's pathway. I experienced a satisfactory first marriage for 24 years, followed by an exceptional second one that has lasted 25 years. I am blessed with 2 married children who have gifted me with 3 charming grandchildren. Tracy remained unmarried again. Based on their accounts, not many men seem to express interest in a middle-aged woman with a young child, despite her attractiveness. They assumed she might have had relationships or even faced legal troubles. My children maintain contact with Tracy, making us half-siblings. The child was showered with affection by all 3 sets of grandparents until they passed away due to old age. My son, the one who maintained regular contact post-divorce, believed that Tracy abstained from dating for the initial 5 years, possibly due to her belief that my marriage wouldn't endure. I believe Tracy was let down by Angel.